Imhotep, African family, and welcome once again to Building the Lighted Temple Wisdom Service. For the purpose of the recording, I am Dr. Nteri Nelson, a metaphysician, clinician, and educator, and co-founder of the Academy of Kemetic Education and Wellness. So once again, beloveds, we welcome you to this Sunday service, and it's a delight to spend this Sunday, this time with each and every one of you. As you are all aware, in building the lighted temple, it's in the midst of these troubled times that we come into this virtual space, these ethereal waters that we have been cultivating, this universalizing resonant vibrational field, this etheric space where we can amplify our vibration together and as one and distribute the light. This is liberated space, beloved. And we come at this time at the near celebration of Martin Luther King. And so let me just take a moment to say good morning to each and every one of you. Welcome, everyone. Well, fasten your seatbelts, beloveds, because we have a lot planned for today. We will be continuing our story that we were very immersed in last week. And so let's get started. I think someone else logged in. I'll say hi in a moment. All right, so we each week, and this week, we are looking at the truth, justice, harmony, and balance. So this is the title of our wisdom service today. At the core of our wisdom service today, truth, justice, harmony, and balance. And as we return to our story, our Kemetic, our African, our Egyptian Kemetic wisdom story that our African ancestors have given us, entitled The Eloquent Peasant. This will be part 2. We simultaneously are going, as we look at truth, justice, harmony, and balance in light of MLK's celebration coming up, we are going to look at the metaphysical meaning of balance. Yes, balance, beloved. And so I'm just going to hold up. Casa says, last week was wonderful. I watched a short movie about after the Wisdom Sunday. Yes, yes. We'll want to immerse and re-immerse and immerse, not only in this story, but so much of the literature, our Kemetic wisdom that we are immersing in. So I'm just going to hold this up to show you. I'm going to pull up the PowerPoint later and show you some images. And then we're going to look at the medu neter of our story, the Eloquent Peasant. But again, we are looking at the metaphysical meaning of balance, the eloquent, as we return to the story, the Eloquent Peasant. And this was, I'm going to hold up this image. I'll show it to you closer in the PowerPoint later. But here I'm in a headstand. There's a reason we do yoga. There's a reason we practice this advanced yoga, because it is key in our metaphysical spiritual development. So here I am in a headstand. And so we'll talk about balance and more as we go along. But we're going to continue where we ended off on page 28. And we'll probably go to maybe 44, 46. And I am going to do a review for those who, it's good to do a review, and for those who weren't here last Sunday, perhaps to do a review also. But we recall that in this balancing, finding balance in today's world, we are in that vertex of the V. We are in this turning point as we make this planetary dimensional shift, which I've talked about numerous times. We're making that shift from a materialization cycle in consciousness, and we're making that shift into a re-spiritualization in consciousness cycle. So we know now we're in the vertex of the V, some call it the tipping point, and we are just in just at this early hash mark of making that hard, arduous uphill climb into a re-spiritualization of consciousness. So we've been talking, beloveds, about the clashing that's been happening between these forces, the material and the spiritual forces, the clashing, the battle of truth over falsehood, of ma'at over isfet. And, we see this registering on our planet and externalized in a very palpable way, that now, beloveds, we're in the midst of a pandemic. And I have named the first pandemic, not as COVID, that's come second, the pandemic of white supremacy that has gripped the consciousness of this planet. And now we're in the grips of this COVID-19 pandemic. And the third pandemic, so the first is white supremacy, that paradigm we are shifting, we have been in the grip of and are working to shift out of. The second pandemic is COVID-19. And the third pandemic is the pandemic of racial disparity, where the impacts that are now precipitating that rip the bandage off of and truly expose the impact of white supremacy, the racial disparities, the injustices. Simultaneous with this, beloveds, we are undergoing, as we've talked about, these massive planetary disturbances that are occurring worldwide. Rising waters, raging fires, twister winds, and shifting earth beneath our feet. And we have the literal threat of the floods with the melting polar ice caps, and the number of changing time cycles that are affecting what is happening now on our planet. So I talk about these at length in my book, KaAbBa, Building the Lighted Temple with the Metaphysical Keys to the Tree of Life. And very specifically in chapter 17, I talk about the spiritual implications of the perfect storm that we now live in. And as we talked about last week, it's on this planet. We come to Earth, Geb, which we know is our Neter Geb, to have right relationship and right knowledge, that right would prevail over might. And we come here in more than one lifetime to work out these issues of finding balance, finding right relationship, right knowledge. And we are not, the portal doesn't open for us to go to other reaches of cosmos until we have demonstrated that harmony and balance in right relationship and right knowledge. So our work here on this little orb, this tiny orb called Earth, which we know was our Neter Geb, is where we're finding harmony, balance, reciprocity, and truth in relationships with one another. And we each Sunday, have been talking about, as we look at, how far removed we are from expressing truth now, that we find falsehood and lies and deceit, and the externalization of that, where, you can be lied right in there, in black and white on the airways. Folks saying the January 6th didn't happen, it was a peaceful demonstration. I mean, it was just so blatant, the lies that are happening. And of course, in our work in building the lighted temple and in the academy studies, we have been immersed in garnering our wisdom going to our primal source to garner the wisdom that our African ancestors have given us. And we know in the work of George James, who has written the book, Stolen Legacy, our legacy has been stolen, it has been distorted, it has been repackaged to and renamed to be something else. And even today, as we in 2022, when we try to tell our story with critical race theory and the 1619 Project, we are up against tremendous forces that would again seek to suppress our history, our contribution. And, you know, as I thought about today, there's all kinds of correlations and correspondences. And I'm reminded of the work that my husband and I have been doing in couples counseling. And we do in couples counseling over 2 decades of work together. We have been doing a lot of healing work with couples and in relationships and families. And in that healing work, for example, when 2 people sit together and one is wounded, and we are going to continue our healing and forgiveness and healing from woundedness and forgiveness series, we are going to continue that. But we have been able and blessed to see that elixir or magic that happens when, for example, in a couple, for example, let's say there has been infidelity, and there's been lots of lies and deception and falsehood, and so finally 2 people get to a place where the relationship is at stake and the truth telling begins to happen. And it's just such a magical turning point because you see a stonewalling of, presenting your case, and the other denying and denying and denying and lying and deceiving. And then there's that turning point where one says, okay, I did it. And there's specificity here. It's like, I did it, and I'm sorry. And it's no, I did it, and I'm sorry for what? What are you sorry for? What did you do? And so beginning to really go into what was the woundedness, what was the hurt and the harm and the deeds done. And that's a very magical moment. And the reason why the first one that has been wounded has to be insistent on a change, and the other who has done the wounding has to admit and confess and do the work of helping the relationship to heal. And when you think about what's happening in our government, our country, and the lies and the deception and the lack of being forthcoming, we haven't hit that point yet where the other is saying, okay, there's still all this double dealing and power grabbing that has nothing to do with truth and righteousness and being in accord with the laws of Ma'at. And so this is something to observe, beloveds, at this time. And please do remember to put your question in the question and answer location. And so both have to recognize there's something in it to make this shift and to make this change, and we're not there yet. All right, so having said all that, we're going to move now. I'm just going to review the Eloquent Peasant. And here we go. So the Eloquent Peasant is our ancient Kemetic, our ancient Egyptian story. And the Eloquent Peasant in the language of Medu is Sekhti-nefer-medu. Nefer is good or true or beautiful, and medu is speech. So the peasant of good speech. And it is an ancient Kemetic story, Egyptian story, that was composed around 1850 BCE, during the time of the Middle Kingdom in Kemet. And so it is the tale about a peasant whose name is Khun-Anup, who stumbles upon the property of the high steward, the noble Rensi, son of Meru, guarded by its harsh overseer, Nemtinak. And it is set in the 9th or 10th dynasty around Heliopolis, which was called Heliopolis by the Romans, but called Het-Nesut by the Kemites. And the tale is described as an elaborate reflection on the connection or disconnection of ethical order and refined speech as transliterated into refined writing. So can we relate to there being some disconnection in ethical order today? And so this is taking place in the Middle Kingdom, which is between 2055 and 1650 BC. And the characters are Khun-Anup, who is the poor peasant who lives with his wife, Marie, and their children in an oasis around the Nile Delta in Egypt, Kemet. And the next character is Rensi, the son of Meru, and he is the noble Rensi, son of Meru, a high steward of Pharaoh or the Nesubiti Neb-Kare. And the peasant Khun-Anup appeals to Rensi when he does not receive justice from Nemtinak. So we saw last week when Khun-Anup doesn't receive justice from Nemtinak, who's like that overseer on the plantation, he appeals higher to Rensi, the son of Meru, for justice. And Nemtinak, there's a Nemtinak everywhere. We certainly had them on the plantations and everywhere. The greedy vassal to the high steward Rensi, Nemtinak. So then Nemtinak notices the peasant Khun-Anup's supply-laden donkeys and devises a trap that will provide him with a reason for taking Khun-Anup's donkeys and goods. So he's planning to rob Khun-Anup. And Neb-Kare is the majesty of the dual king Neb-Kara, and he is the pharaoh of the 10th dynasty of Heracleopolis, which is 2050 BC, during the first intermediate period. And our foremost Netcher, as always, beloveds, is Ma'at, who was the ancient Netcher, Kemetic Netcher of our laws. Where do we go for that corpus of law to guide us in harmony and balance, which allows for social justice? And so this is the theme present throughout this work. So the summary of the story is as follows, and then we're going to go to where we left off so we can see the Medu Netcher as we read the next part of the story. The story begins with a poor peasant, Khun-Anup, traveling to market with his donkeys, heavily laden with goods to exchange for supplies for his family. While Khun-Anup was en route, Nemtinak, a vassal of the high steward Rensi, notices the peasant approaching his lands and devises a scheme to steal Khun-Anup's donkeys and supplies. Nemtinok tricks the peasant by placing a cloth on the narrow public path where one side was bordered by the river and the other side where the private fields of Nemtinok. His placing of the cloth on the path forces the peasant to either trample the cloth, step into the water, or take his donkeys over Nemtinok's field, his fields, in order to continue his journey. So I talked last week, family, about, how many traps are set for us at, as we drive, as we jog, as we, our children go to school. Our African ancestors so foretold the story of what we would need to navigate through. So continuing, as Khun-Anup is appealing to Nemtinok's sense of reason, I mean, you would think some reason here, in blocking his path with the cloth. One of Khun-Anup's donkeys eats a bite of barley, and Nemtinok uses this as a justification to take Khun-Anup's donkeys and goods. And beloveds, I talked last week about how you're in a little traffic stop, and the next thing, one thing just leads, and there's just an escalation of things. When Khun-Anup complains this punishment is unfair, Nemtinok beats him. Khun-Anup cries out for justice, and Nemtinok threatens the peasant with death if he dares to complain. Khun-Anup does not accept this injustice and continues to appeal to Nemtinok for 10 days. So last week, beloved, I think we got up to the 3rd day and we were getting ready to start the 4th day, but this has been prevalent in our history, that when we see an injustice, when an injustice has been done, we are very vocal about it. We have suffered through our beating, and that continues to the very day. Failing to receive justice from Nemtinok, Khun-Anup seeks out the high steward, the noble Rensi, son of Meru, and presents his case. So this is a very common theme for us to go to that next level and try to seek justice there. Rensi brings the peasant's case to the magistrates, who dismiss the case as merely being a matter of a peasant at odds with a landowner. In other words, diminishing his cries. But Rensi does not relay this information to the peasant. Rensi brings the story of the wronged peasant before the pharaoh, the Nesubiti Nebkaru, telling him how eloquently the peasant speaks. So we see a shift here, as I talked about last week, in Rensi, because there's always this Rensi, and you'll see when I talk a little later about Hillary Clinton today quoting MLK on that moderate, where this theme of the Rensi comes up. And I'll read that in a little bit. But something is moved by this Rensi, and he by the eloquent speech of the peasant, and intrigued by the report of a peasant who speaks so eloquently. I mean, think today about Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, all who have, Marcus Garvey, all who speak to this day and spoke so eloquently, all our ancestors along the way, and those living now, speaking to justice. The pharaoh instructs Rensi to not respond to the peasant's pleas, so that the peasant would continue to make his eloquent speeches, and they could be written down by the pharaoh. So, beloveds, we see how important capturing that divine speech and being able to render it to ears of those who are in higher power, higher authority, even in our history, even in our Kemetic wisdom, to record how to do right, how to be just. So the Pharaoh Renzi orders Renzi to feed the peasant and his family while the peasant continues to plead his case, further instructing Renzi not to let the peasant know he was providing the food. So for 9 days, Khun-Anup complimented the high steward Renzi and begged for justice. In other words, throwing himself before and saying, surely I call you to your greater good, your goodness to be just on my behalf. But as we do, and we're doing in trying to get voting rights acts today to protest, not being able to have water or stand in a long line as we seek to vote. So the story continues. After 9 days of speeches, Khun-Anup threatened suicide. Because this work can wear on our mental health after fashion. But after sensing that he was being ignored, Khun-Anup insulted Renzi, so he got back in touch with his fire and the righteousness of his struggle, which our laws of Ma'at teach us we have a right to get in touch with that anger in regard to the righteousness of our struggle. Khun-Anup insulted Renzi and was punished with a beating. So again, this is a battle, this is a struggle, and our African ancestors gave us all the ingredients in being, staying the course and being triumphant in the struggle. After one last speech, the discouraged peasant left, but Renzi sent for him and ordered him to return. But rather than being punished for his insolence, the peasant was given justice. Renzi, after reading Khun-Anup's last speech, was impressed and ordered the donkeys and the goods to be returned to Khun-Anup and the peasant to be compensated with all the property of Nemtinak, making Nemtinak as poor as Khun-Anup had been. The eloquent peasant shows the modern reader a glimpse of how justice and crime might have been attained in ancient Kemetic culture. So I'm going to go here now, beloveds, to the Medu so we can see and read. We're up to 21. That's wonderful. Let me say hello to everyone. Hotep, let's see, who did I miss? Okay, John, Hotep, and let's see, did I say hello to Linda? Maybe, if I didn't, Hotep, Linda, and Roderick says greetings to all the panelists. And let's see, Nora, all right. And let's see, did I miss anyone? Okay, maybe Timothy, maybe, I hope I said Hotep to you. All right, so please do put your Linda, Hotep, and Grand Rising everyone. So here we go to the Medu. So we're picking up on page 27, and I'm just going to start here. All right, so let's just start here. A great lord. So this is a new Khun-Anup is talking, and he says, a great lord takes what is without owner and robs only that. Your possessions are in your house. Half a liter of beer and 3 loaves of bread. What is it you expect to satisfy your dependents? In other words, when your cupboard is full, right? A mortal man dies alone with his underlings. or you will be a man of eternity. So he's asking, he's putting this question to Renzi. Is it not wrong? A balance that is crooked, the pointer of a balance that errs. And we're going to talk about balance throughout. Is it not wrong? A balance that is crooked, the pointer of the balance that errs. Remember our work, beloveds, on the scales of my art, how when on each of the pans and on the scale, the heart on one side, the lightness of a feather, the ostrich feather on the other, that how key this balance is. Is it not wrong? A balance that is crooked, the pointer of a balance that errs, a truly correct man who strays. Look, justice is fleeing from you. You know, are we going to cut ourselves some slack and not be in balance? Look, justice is fleeing from you, expelled from its place. Officials are doing evil. Do we have some officials in high place that are doing evil? The norm of speech is biased, you know, that putting their hand on the scale and weighting and causing imbalance. And judges are carrying off what it seizes. Look how Trump has stacked the courts, and legislation is proposed to weight the scale. This means that he who twists speech from its correct sense, acting corruptly thereby. So to twist speech from its correct sense, for our African ancestors, language, speech, correct speech, Nteri-Nelson-medu, good speech, is what is at hand here. He who should give breath is suffocating on the ground. All right, so we talked last week about the importance of breath and how when we don't have good speech, we begin to suffocate. He who should rest is making people pant. The arbitrator is a cheat. So look at us now with COVID. It is a pandemic of panting. It is a pandemic of not being able to get the breath, not being able to get the air. You know, what may be the deeper metaphysical symbolism of the pandemic and the very symptoms it creates in terms of the distress in breathing in the lungs and so forth. He who should relieve distress is ordering its creation. So Khun-Anup is just hammering. The harbor is flooded. He who should punish injustice is doing evil. And this evil has been going on. We're coming now to that place in this tipping point where the planet, we have a planetary urge and impelling to turn this corner so that we may live justly on this planet, and the races that have these seeming racial types that have evolved, that we all may live as one human family. We know we are the original people, that all life begins in Africa, and Africans went out and populated the world. And in the 60,000 years ago glaciation cycle, we have this seeming unfoldment of these seeming racial types, and we're all showing up. If you want to see every seeming racial type, just go to your local subway station in New York or any major city to see how we all must come together. He says, then the high steward Renzi, son of Meru, said, is what is on your mind of greater concern to you than that my servant might seize you? In other words, are you thinking beyond just yourself? You're getting abstract here. You're thinking about something larger than yourself. And then the peasant, but this peasant said, he who measures heaps of corn is pilfering for himself. He who fills for another is withholding from his amount. He who should govern according to the laws is ordering theft. In other words, he's speaking on higher levels. Who then will repel evil? A peasant is asking this question of one in higher authority. He who should dispel weakness is acting corruptly. He who should correct another is being crooked. He who should reproach another is an evildoer. Do you find anything for yourself? Redress is short, but evil is long. A good deed returns to its place of yesterday. This is the precept: act for him who acts, to make him act. It is thanking him for what he does. It is parrying a thing before shooting. It is commissioning something from a craftsman. What would that a moment would destroy havoc in your vineyard, decimation of your birds, destruction among your waterfowl. He who should see has turned blind. One who should hear, deaf. So, you know, we have that, and those who are in those places of so-called authority who are blind and who are deaf. And we know one of the laws of Ma'at is to not stuff. I have not closed my ears to the laws of Ma'at. So here we have closing of one's ears and one's eyes to truth, to justice, to harmony and balance. And one who should lead has gone astray. I mean, look at this leadership that we are in the vertex of the V with it, this crisis point, at a tipping point, at a point of clashing and a point of civil war, nearing civil war. And he says, basket, have you not gone too far? And that basket, that word means someone accumulating wealth. It one who takes bribes. Why do you act against yourself? Look, you are strong and powerful. Your arm is strenuous, but your heart is greedy and mercy has left you. How lamentable is the poor man you ruin. You are like the messenger of Kenti. Look, you surpass the lady of pestilence. If something is not for you, it is not for her. If something is not against her, it is not against you. If you won't do it, she won't do it. Who possesses bread should be merciful, whereas brutality is for the criminal. In other words, look at the wealthy. How many people have become millionaires and billionaires and are in possession of great bread? It said theft suits those without belongings. He has very eloquent speech. Theft suits those without belongings. Things are robbed by a criminal. You know, those taking the most of those who have the most is what he's saying. But an evil act of someone without need, he is not to be rebuked. Someone without need. Is it, and that's the tipping point. Why can't we all have equal rights and justice under the law? Why can't we all vote for the candidate of our choice? Why, what needs to, and this came up last week in our discussion, one raised the question, you know, this about white supremacy. It's about letting go of white supremacy. This is how we may shift, make further shift. Now, of course, we have other things to consider because the Chinese are going to come into power next. And so that's another consideration. But why can't we all live in peace and harmony? Why can't we see the bountifulness of the planet and see that there is distribution for all? Why does a 16-inch derma skin of whiteness need to prevail as it has prevailed? This is what is at stake here. And this is what is so feared because of the, as we talked about, the decreasing numbers in the birth dearth of Caucasians, that Black, brown people now dominate not only America, but dominate the planet. And the fear that of what would happen if white was not supreme, or the supremacy. This is what is at hand. And this is why the hand must be put on the scale to weight in the direction of white supremacy and their favor and their rulership. And we've been talking extensively, family, about more of the peril we need to be very mindful of in terms of this artificial intelligence and the push for the machine, because what is they lack in numbers, they are working to put in place in terms of artificial intelligence and the use of robots and the machine. So we are in the struggle. This is no game we play. And we know the time we incarnated, we came at, as I've talked about, a time propitious and both perilous. And we are just in the valley of trying to make this uphill climb in this very important shift. So then goes on to say, is it self-seeking, but you are sated with your bread? In other words, you're satisfied. You should be satisfied and drunk with your beer, and you are rich in every respect, while the face of the helmsman is forward, the ship deviates as it pleases. Now, this language around the ship and water, I'll speak to in a moment as it relates to this quote that from Martin Luther King. But while the face of the helmsman is forward, the ship deviates as it pleases. While the king is in the stateroom and the helm is in your hand, evil is placed near you. My plea is long and the division is difficult. What with him there, people say, create a shelter so that your shore will be safe. For look, your harbor is surrounded by crocodiles. May your tongue be truthful so that you won't go astray. That organ in a man is his canker worm, and the tongue is the measure and the on the scale. The tongue is the organ that we possess that you know, can be straight, or it can be crooked. We can speak with a forked tongue. We can talk out of both sides of our mouth. And we know the many passages in the Pertim Rule that speak about being double speaking and talking out of both sides of our mouth. It goes on to say, don't speak falsehood, beware of officials. The judges are fattened bequet, meaning rich from bribes. Speaking falsehood is their herbage. And I looked up that word so I we could speak about it. And it's vegetation. I mean, it's like what proliferates. It's lies light on their hearts. O wisest of all mankind, are you unaware of my case? And if you think about the time of this writing, we're writing when we have not encountered the European in the way we have would subsequently, and we haven't encountered the full force of a white supremacist paradigm. So this is really, course correction around among African people. This is before the invasions, before the Hyksos, before we were rudely interrupted, before the Hyksos, before the Greeks, before the Assyrians, before the Romans, before the Arabs. When this is African people talking to African people, reminding them of what is correct relationship. And so think later, beloveds, when we're talking to the seeming racial types that have unfolded, the imposition of a white supremacist paradigm, and here we are on the ships of enslavement, making these pleas to the people who appear in authority at that time. And so our African ancestors worked on the script long before we really needed it. And please put your questions in the Q&A. Long before we needed it, and it was written down, and it was recorded. Our African ancestors said, let the peasants speak. We need to write this down because we might live in a cycle of time. We might, as African people who then got caught in the glaciation cycle, have this unfoldment of these seeming racial types where we got caught in climatic conditions where we had to adjust, and we would lose melanin, and so would unfold these seeming racial types. And we're at the point where we need to remember what they recorded when they were homogenous, before the unfoldment of these seeming racial types, before we came into the crisscrossing, because we populated the world. And now, because we populated the world and there's been those climatic conditions that have led to the culture in each of those respective parts of the world, we're crisscrossing again with the ability to travel and across the globe and communicate. And now, more than ever, we need to read and remember, well, what did they write down about how to treat each other? How do you, especially when one is in more authority, just because you're in authority, they are forgetting, we elect these officials to be in governance. We elect them. We are the ones that put them in power to be of governance of a greater whole. How dare they forget that? But they have. They want to tell us we need to wait in line hours and not have even a drink of water. Imagine what has happened. So relieve all distress on the water. Now, this is very important here as we talk about the water, and because this quote was made today from Hillary Clinton on MLK. I'll read a little bit before I go to the quote. It says, look, I am laden with sorrow. Look, I am in your hands. Look, I am underway without a ship. So it's about the water and how we navigate. So you should take account of me. Look, I am in distress. Rescue all who are drowning. Save the shipwreck. Save me in the domain within your reach. It's in your domain to reach and help. Reach me in the domain that is within your reach. And this peasant came to plead with him for a third time. So at this point, what I want to do is shift to the PowerPoint. Oh, let me just stay here one more moment. And it says, everyone has a need for you like water. I mean, we want our justice. We want to live, have life, prosperity, and health like water. Everyone has a need for you like water. You are Hapi, who makes the meadows green and restores mounds that have been ravaged. Punish theft and protect the poor. Don't become a flood against the suppliant. Beware of the approach of eternity. Desire to last, as is said, doing justice is breath for the nose. And so I want to just go here to the PowerPoint. And there's a question there. I'm going to come to the question, and then I'll come back to where we left off. All right, let me just switch here a moment. I'll get to the question. Let's see. This was taken from a news article today where Hillary Clinton is quoting Martin Luther King in regard to the events that have been happening this week, because we always find application in modern daily living. And she says, she's quoting him, and he says, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. says, I had hoped that the white moderate would understand that law and order exist for the purpose of establishing justice, and that when they fail in this purpose, they become the dangerously structured dams that block the flow of social progress. I mean, wasn't Martin Luther King speaking as an oracle of the voice of our ancestors? Because it's about the waters, it's about the Hapi, it's about the Nile on a local level, it's about the waters of space, the noon on the cosmic level, how we are to immerse ourselves and have access to the fount of all possibility. And so these so-called officials or social structures are just, to implement the concourse and the pathway of receipt and flow, not to be a dam. And this is where we are at, that place of damming. I'm going to take this question before I go any further. And Roderick says, well, he says, what is the Lady of Pestilence and what does she represent? I mean, it's pretty vivid there that pestilence is where we are now. Pestilence is disease, disaster, destruction, Roderick. So, and I wish I had seen your question earlier to tie it to the verse where that came up. But I hope that suffices for now. So let's talk now, since we're here on this slide, about balance. Because what is balance? It's about restoring that harmony and justice. And here this is in a headstand, which I talked about, and the importance of yoga, all forms of yoga, because this is one form, and then there is the advanced whirling form that I teach and yoga whirling practice. But what is justice? What is finding harmony and balance? What is the tongue? What is the being crooked? What is the being off of balance and out of accord with the laws of my art? When you practice a headstand, beloveds, when you get in a headstand, you either are in balance and you could hold that position, which is what justice is, when you strike that balance, or you are tipping and you're toppling over and you are out of balance. Justice is metaphysical. Balance is metaphysical. And it's not abstract. You either know it and you have it and you strike it, or you miss the mark. And this is what our spiritual practices, such as yoga, can teach us. And so moving here, I talked last week about the plumb line. And the meaning of the plumb line is, this is in our story of the Eloquent Peasant. The plumb line. Plumb line is a line or as a cord that has at one end a weight such as a Plumb Bob, and is especially used to determine verticality. That's a headstand. Verticality. You strike it or you miss it. There's no missing the mark. You either line up on the scales of my art. Justice is real. Justice is measurable. Justice is quantifiable. And so here, this is another image of the plumb line. It has its correspondence with the spine. Our very anatomy, our very constitution, which is human and divine, is speaking to this alignment and balance and law of balance. You know, we walk with it. We are blessed with it. It is our inheritance if we but work to strike that balance on all levels. And then this is another example. Now, there are so many examples in our Kemetic wisdom, because we have the Plumb Bob here. It's a weight usually with a pointed tip on the bottom, suspended from a string and used as a vertical reference line or plumb line. It is a precursor to the spiritual level and is used to establish a vertical datum. It is typically made of stone, wood, lead, etc. It may be made of bone or ivory. The instrument has been used since at least the time of Ancient Kemetic to ensure the constructions are plumb or vertical. How are we holding our verticality as it comes to justice? And beloveds, we see none other that this is us. This is the jet pillar. This is Osir. This is our Osirian resurrection. How we are holding that balance. And as we continue in our story, you'll see the Medjugorje Imjed Greg Nechek Isu. Do not speak falsehood, for you are the balance. These are some of the passages I took from our story, The Eloquent Peasant. And then this says, your tongue is the pointer. You know, you think about the tip of the tongue, that is where we want to be, straight as an arrow. And how how the Native Americans would say, white men speak with forked tongue, right? Our African ancestors gave us all the tools. Tek pu nes ek, your tongue is the pointer. And the secret of the truth will be found, and falsehood will be cast on the ground. Because when you're in this pose, when you're balanced, that is a spiritual position. And anything that the gravity of lies falls to the ground. Only that which is spiritually right may remain erect. And so here, the secret of truth will be found, and falsehood will be cast on the ground. Gimchu emu ma'at. See, our beloved ma'at. Ready to sa greg ta earth, ground. And so, beloveds, I bring you now, because only so many of us are going to come into these ethereal waters, into this building the lighted temple, because you're ready. You're on fire. You've come at the time to fulfill your life purpose and service. We know this is no game we play. We know this is no dress rehearsal. This is the real thing. This is, and we came because we're ready. And so dipping deeper, taking the plunge into our primal wisdom so that we are empowered to the maximum, in the fount of all possibility. We immerse ourselves for our supply. We are Asur. We are accessors to the fount of all possibility. So I bring you to this, the metaphysical keys to dispelling illusion as we talk about balance, beloveds. And you can find the metaphysical keys for those of you who have been studying and are in the course now. In KaAbBa, Building a Lighted Temple, page 234, you can find the metaphysical keys to the tree of life. And what are the metaphysical keys to the tree of life? They are keys that teach us how, that spirit has imparted, where we can penetrate into words and see the meaning, dispel the illusion, derive the higher meaning, dispel the illusion, see where words have been potentized to be injurious to African consciousness. And so let's take this word balance. All right, so the first thing in the keys, beloveds, is you put the word in a circle. That's number one, in terms of using these metaphysical keys to dispel illusion. How do you penetrate into words and understand their deeper metaphysical meaning? You place the words in a circle because the circle is a mouth. It is an oracle. And these nature, and those who are doing these studies know, we looked at that each letter in the alphabet has its correspondence numerically. We've done all that. You put the word in a circle, and that becomes the oracle, the aperture through which the ancestors may speak, the nature. Each letters and numbers are nature. They are divine beings through which the word in itself went out and created the universe. So we know the power in a word. So the first step, you put, and then you begin to look at, well, what may be derived from this word? And I'm just going to make it shortcut because of the interest of time and take you right there. So this word, what does this word reveal? It reveals Cain and Abel. And beloveds, if for those who've been studying with me in the academy for some decades, we have been seeing all the ways that this white supremacist paradigm hasn't even really been imaginative. Things are right before our eyes, taking our story, our stuff, and repackaging it and giving it to us as if they came up with it in its distorted, renamed form. And so here we are. When we take the word balance, it reveals Cain and Abel, the story of Cain and Abel. Now, what is the story of Cain and Abel? Let me go here. In the story of Cain and Abel, so this is Genesis 4. Now, beloveds, you know, let me see if I can get my, now, you know, our Genesis does not start with Genesis 4 in the Bible. We turn to the p.2, which predates the Bible. The so-called Egyptologists can't even say how old this is. Thousands and thousands of years old. They can't even date how old these texts are. People want to go to the Cain and Abel of Genesis. All right, we'll go there because you'll see our story. But why we don't, this is only a diversion for us to prove a point and to prove and to show how our story has been, that we are the original story, and there has subsequently been panoply within panoply, or story within story within story. But we go to Cain and Abel as we're coming closer to the close of today, and Genesis 4. And so this is what we learn or relearn. And I have older versions of the Bible, and then this is a little bit newer that just gets rid of some of the fluff in the language and says things a little more plainly. So he says, Adam made love to his wife Eve, and she became pregnant and gave birth to Cain. She said, with the help of the Lord, I have brought forth a man. Later, she gave birth to his brother Abel. Now, Abel kept flocks and Cain worked the soil. In the course of time, Cain brought some of the fruits of the soil as an offering to the Lord. And Abel also brought an offering, fat portions from some of the firstborn of his flock. The Lord looked with favor on Abel and his offering, but on Cain and his offering, he did not look with favor. So Cain was very angry. His face was downcast. Then the Lord said to Cain, why are you angry? Why is your face downcast? If you do what is right, you will not be accepted. If you do what is right, will you not be accepted? But if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at your door. It desires to have you, but you must rule over it. Now Cain said to his brother Abel, let's go out to the field. While they were in the field, and this is our story of Osir and Set, or Setech, where at the banquet, Set invites Osir to try on this sarcophagus, this jewel-lined sarcophagus for size. And so, like Setech, Cain says to Abel, let's go out to the field. While they were in the field, Cain attacked his brother Abel and killed him. So, beloveds, there is certainly more to that story, but why labor in being off on that story when we can stay with our primal wisdom, our story, and understand the struggle that we are in, and be equipped and forceful and forthright in that struggle. Let me see if there's some people have put comments in the chat. I'm going to read them. Rosa says, last week was wonderful. I watched the short movie about the wisdom, the service Sunday. Yes. And Roderick says Hotep. And Linda says Hotep and Grand Rising, everybody. Nora says great and Grand Rising. And Roderick says, got it. Okay. And he says, I assume that is what it represented, but wanted to be clear in lieu of the statement afterwards. Really concentrated. Thank you. And Nellie, Nellie, we have all our yoga practitioners here, right? Rosangela and Nellie. And Nellie says yoga meditation was established thousands of years ago by African people in ancient Kemet. Absolutely. It is powerful to know that the history of Egypt Kemet has influenced one of the most popular exercises in spiritual practices spreading in the world. Yes, we gave the world yoga. Please understand that it is no accident that Black people have extremely difficult time acknowledging the true connection to our African culture. Yes, yes, and there's reason for that. We're overcoming one of the impediments, which is overcoming not knowing our history and overcoming being spooked up by our practices. People have told us that, who have attended church or part of Christianity, that they've been told to stay away from yoga, that they've been spooked up by the very arts and sciences that we have given the world. And the same Europeans who are urging that we would stay away are flocking to the very arts and sciences and practices that we've been taught to be spooked up about. Ancestors traveled to neighboring countries like India and China because we gave them the martial arts, we gave them all of that, and introduced African cultural traditions of yoga and meditation. Excellently expressed, Nellie. Thank you so much for that. And Rosangela says, we are definitely in a moment of awakening, but we are also so impregnated with the falsehood of the white system of destruction and domination that most of us desires to acquire what is against us without even knowing. Yes, and this is our work, beloveds. This is our work to be the herald, to be the beacon, to help the planetary consciousness make this dimensional shift, to shed the lies and the deceit, to dispel the illusion, and to be triumphant in the laws of Ma'at as one human family, as one planetary family. And Horace says, thank you for this powerful and intuitive lesson in holding those who abuse power. Yes, yes. And our African ancestors, now when we were all in Africa, and there were no, because whites are recent unfoldment, 10,000 years, not long, just very recent. And African people are millions of years old. So we were together and as one a long time. And we had to work out rules and balance and right rules of engagement and right relationship. And we can see in the story of Khun-Anup, the eloquent peasant, that our ancestors saw the importance of writing it down so we could remember it to this day, the importance of right relationship. And that's why we're here. That's why we've come to this earth globe, this Geb, to do the work of right relationship, to find harmony and balance, to have right rule over might. And then we go to other reaches of cosmos. There are those who, you know, are the billionaires who trying to go into space and have Star Wars. How misinformed. But anyway, it continues. This is Horace. He says, we must hold them accountable by speaking truth to power, by using our tongues to exhort truth and balance. Yes, like Dr. King, and learn to discern truth from lies and deception. As Malcolm X once said, if you're not careful, the newspapers will have you hating the people who are being oppressed and loving the people who are doing the oppressing. So well expressed, Horace. So well expressed. You can see our moment, the moment of, and Paula says, thank you. We must heal the shame that binds us. Absolutely. You help us to do that. Oh, bless you, Paula, and Hesse, Ashe, Dua, to all in your comments, because it's clear what we must do. It's, you know, we get clear by immersing in the waters, the primal waters. Everything else is murky. You know, we can go to, if we go to YouTube and you know, we might land in cesspools of stuff, because that's can be a cesspool. But when we immerse ourselves in the primal waters, we get clear. And that's why we've come. That's what we have come to do. We have gone a little over today, but I just want to make sure that I've spoken to each and every one of you. Let me just see if I missed anyone. I think I got everyone today. What a beautiful, reflections you and comments and questions you have today. And that's what's so needed. And Linda says, nature caused the ice age, so whites and the conflicts they bring are the result of the climate event. And you end with a question mark. So I thought it was going to be a statement, but you end with a question mark. Nature caused the ice age, so whites in the conflict they bring are the result of the climatic event. I'm going to do, Linda, you know, once again, you know, spurring to bigger and wider in these Sunday services. I'm going to talk about the unfoldment of these seeming racial types. I have other videos where I have done so. And to talk about what's the connection with ice and sun, and we want to reference our work of Sheikh Anta Diop, who talks about the ice people and the sun people. And, you know, what is this all about? What is this? We want to enjoy the journey. This is the journey of unfolding consciousness. This is a psychological and spiritual journey of unfolding consciousness that we have embarked upon. And this is where we are right now. And it's wonderful to know what time it is to be working through the spiritual implications of the perfect storm and navigating the way in clear, crystalline, primal waters from the work of our ancestors. All right, beloveds, amazing, amazing, amazing. I look to see each and every one of you next week. Tell folks about the Building the Lighted Temple Wisdom Service, and enjoy Martin Luther King Day. And I'll actually send you a link with an event that's happening at UMass I have served previously as adjunct professor at UMass, so they keep me in the loop about what events are coming. It's virtual, so I'll get that out to you. If you can tune in, that would be great. And I look forward to seeing the class on Wednesday. And we're going to go a little longer because we want to review some parts of module 4. So can we go to 9:15? Can everybody arrange so that we can have that time together? Peace and blessings, everyone. All right. Loving says, yes, yes. 9:15. Yes, 9:15. I think if we can do that, that will be good, since we had technical difficulty last time. So look forward to seeing everyone. See you, Linda, 9:15. All right, everyone's on board, 9:15. Okay, all right. Is that for students enrolled in classes only for Wednesday? Yes, and you can learn more about this, Roger, for the startup of the next class. So that's a class where people want to even go deep. They want to go deeper, and they want to understand how to really navigate in understanding the tree of life. Okay, all right. So Uncle Jasanev, life, prosperity, and health. Blessings. See you next Sunday.